Thank you. Indigenous rights are protected under Section 35 of the Constitution Act of 1982. These are rights that some Indigenous peoples of Canada hold as a result of their ancestors' long-standing use and occupancy of the land. The rights of certain peoples to hunt, trap, and fish on ancestral lands are examples of Indigenous rights. What makes this provincial government think that it can take away our right to hunt, trap, and fish?
The Honourable Minister of Sustainable Development.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. And our government respects the Constitution and was very diligent in doing Section 35 consultations in working with our Indigenous partners. We're also very well aware of the Supreme Court ruling in 2006, the R versus Morris decision that had provided a framework on Indigenous rights. And so our government is very respectful of the Indigenous rights, and we're looking forward to partnering with them on ending unsafe and unsustainable hunting practices here in Manitoba.
The Honourable Member for Kiiwetinoong on a supplementary question.
Minister, whatever this government thinks it has accomplished in alleged consultations over the proposed night hunting ban obviously isn't the case. If that were the case, I wouldn't have had several Indigenous leaders contacting me since the First Minister announced that he was going to introduce such legislation. A year ago, the Premier made his race war comments. The First Minister has had plenty of time to meet with Manitoba's 63 First Nations. Can this minister table a list of which of those 63 First Nation leaderships this government has consulted with and who have allegedly agreed to this proposed legislation?
The Honourable Minister for Sustainable Development.
Well, thank you very much, Madam Speaker. And as the members opposite is aware, she's referring to legislation that has not been tabled in this chamber yet. And respectfully, I will provide her with that information, including more details about our consultation on this legislation when I indeed table the legislation in this House on Wednesday.
The Honourable Member for Kiiwetinoong on a final supplementary.
Thank you. Last week we were given the opportunity to offer praise to Indigenous leaders in Manitoba. I was surprised by this because it was the first respectful statement about our Indigenous leaders since this government took power. This was a direct attempt by the First Minister to sweet talk Manitoba's Indigenous peoples before reigniting his race war. It is also very clear that the Premier is attempting to regain votes from his dwindling voter base. Manitoba is better than that. Will the Premier announce today that this government will not mess with my people's inherent right to hunt, trap, or fish?
Order. The Honourable First Minister.
Extensive consultation aside, Madam Speaker, common sense says that blinding an animal and shooting it with a high-powered rifle is hardly sport, hardly fair to the animal. That being said, it's also dangerous. It's dangerous to the people who engage in that practice. It can cause injury. It can cause death. It has.
Yes.
People in Manitoba have been killed as a consequence of these unsafe practices, recognized widely as unsafe. They remain unsafe regardless of the race, creed, or color of participants, and they should stop. And so this legislation is designed to make sure that a fair respect for Indigenous hunting rights is balanced by a respect for all and for the safety and best interests of all.
Here.